Cool. Okay, so we're going to do the Unreal layout. We're going to start manipulating some things. As I said before, we're going to use Unreal Engine 4.17. It is set up as my current engine, so I can just launch from right here. I can also launch from right here. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one project for this entire semester. And when we start getting into version control, I'll show you how to put it into version control. I'll give you guys login so you can pull it down anytime you want to. And I'll just keep on adding this one project. Okay, so it'll be something that you guys can possess and rummage around. Just don't push any changes and delete the whole thing for everyone else. I'll probably lock that feature maybe for everyone else. So what's cool about Unreal Engine is it does have version control built into the engine, so you can work with a team and it checks out objects, files, and stuff automatically so that people don't overwrite each other's changes and stuff. I'm not only making a new project, but in the background I'm also opening up the content examples, and I'm going to show you how to navigate through that, teach yourself, break these things apart, and then take your favorite stuff and move it to your own project you're working with. Therefore, staying within the ecosystem of Unreal and not worry about the internet and all the crazy, weird diseases you can get from the internet that would go into your project that don't work in VR. And not everything made by Unreal Engine is guaranteed to work in VR. It's just guaranteed to work in a game engine for your screen. So even from there, we'll always be talking about and analyzing what can be optimized more for a better experience. So this is now the project launcher for 4.17. Minimize content examples. And we're going to start with new project, so that's this tab right here. And now there's all sorts of cool templates. And like, should you want to be making a marble rolling game, there's a marble rolling game template for you. For all those people who want that genre. I'm sure that's probably an entire class at the Game Center. There's a puzzle template. There's a first-person and a third-person template. We might jump into that next week. There's also a VR template. It's a little bit more complicated than we're ready to get into just yet. We're just going to do a blank project, and slowly through the semester, we'll start bringing more things into this project. So this is a blank blueprint project, okay? And then again, file management, I'm going to go towards my D drive, which is my storage drive, and I made a folder for Unreal projects there. And this one's be called Narrative VR 2018, right? And so everything will go in here. It is a desktop quality, maximum quality, so our desktop console, maximum quality, and I can have no starter content, so this project will be 0 bytes big or whatever, has nothing there, or I'm going to start off with starter content. Starter content is 600 megabytes. Don't always put it on your project, just adding half a terabyte to your project. You might not even need it. We're going to kind of analyze what's part of the starter content, just some general materials, textures, particles, just to get you started. Okay. So this time we will do it, but we won't do it again. All right. So blank with starter content. Create your project. And while that's happening, jump over to the content examples, and here is, as I said, like this interesting way of displaying information that is kind of very distinctly Unreal. And it tells you here is a project and a collection of maps. So how do you load these maps? Let's go to this content. We already talked about the content browser and these folders. But what we have right here is filters. I can filter by maps. So I should say, just show me levels. Boom. Here's all the levels that are in here. These are, each one is, here's the Hall of Math if we want to learn vector math. Here is a thing called morph targets and all these different kind of things. These are all the topics. These are Encyclopedia Britannica of Unreal. I can also load the maps by going over to Open Level, and here's another way of viewing it. I have view options here, and I can scale the sliders to see the thumbnails bigger or smaller to my liking. Okay. And what is cool for everyone? Well, I think what's cool is effects, right? So let's open up the effects and take a look at some particles. So what it's going to do is it's going to kind of break down particles into all the different ways you can render particles inside the game engine, right? So now we have a new hall of particles, right? And I can walk down, I can say, oh, okay, those are GPU versus CPU. Maybe I don't know what that is yet, but I eventually will probably. We have particles with trails. We have an attraction, right? There's like it's sucking in. We've got collisions with particles, all sorts of stuff, even including a man on fire. Right? So as remember from before, if I hit play, I'm probably going to start playing from this thing called a player start, right? If I hit play, normal play, I'm going to start from player start, right? I move around, I can see, and I can navigate around. If I move this back and I hit play, I'm from this player start. So already you see how you can manipulate that and put that into the area where you want to test something really quickly, right? So that's our first little lesson about in the engine, okay? And then if I want to just simulate, I want to see this thing has a what? A velocity cone module. I don't know if that's actually the thing working, so let's simulate it. And I'm just going to stand right here, and now I'm seeing what the velocity cone thing is, right? So I'm simulating. Simulating doesn't accept key presses and some other stuff, but or does actually if you make it. But anyway, it's just a way of having things run, but I'm not actually playing the game, right? Often, what I use it, and I'll get to this later, is if I have objects have like gravity on them and they can fall, and I want to have like a series of like rocks, I'll actually place the rocks in the air, simulate it, let them fall naturally, and say save your simulation. That's what like the main use of simulating is for, is like simulating physics and then letting things fall naturally using the built-in game engine, physics and collision. You'll see me say this over and over again. Game engines are lazy by default. They don't want to put effort in, so we have to tell it to do some things, and we're going to try to wake it up a bunch, but in general it tries to make things easy for itself, okay? So I want to see what this Man on Fire is doing. Some WASDing over here. Deer Jam. Oh my goodness. Oh. What's this over here? Little sound? Cheap. That's cool. Like particles of shadows, all sorts of cool stuff. So I want this guy and his particle system in my project. And as I said before, you have to sometimes select on these little sprites right here, these little widgets, to select the particles. It would be too hard if I had to try to grab onto a flame, right? So this setting, selecting here, I have the Man on Fire and the Man on Fire component. And do I have a skeleton? There's the skeleton of the Man on Fire, okay? I'm going to select both of them. Right here we have the world outliner. This is everything inside of my scene, right? And here's my character. And if let's say I get really lost, I don't know where I'm at. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know where I'm at. I can double click, and now I'm back, right? So here's some other ways you're going to get used to navigating around and being efficient with this. So I have both the particle system and the character selected. Well, I'll probably get to that. I'm just going to do it one at a time. I'm going to right click and say show me the content browser. Boom. Here's the particles. Let's migrate it. Right click, asset actions, migrate to my project. Don't worry about saving it. And there it is. We have the character, we have the materials, the particle system, and the textures. So we're not really going to get into what these are. We just know that I can use them. And it brings over everything across. It's telling me to find a destination content folder. And the destination content folder is the NV 2018 content folder that I've already talked to you about. That's like that's the most important folder in your project hierarchy. And then it's going to say, yep, you did it right. You migrated successfully. Let's make sure we get this guy too. I'm not sure if I included it or not. So find a content browser. Let's migrate that over. Don't care about saving it. And yeah, I think we already did it, but I just wanted to make sure. I also don't see the animation. I want to make sure I get the animation. So I'm going to include the animation file just so you can see what this looks like. This is just the animation file, right? And we'll get into some mocap and stuff like that, and I'll show you that stuff. Let's just take it all. I want it all. I could have also just easily right-clicked on the character folder and just migrated an entire folder. And in fact, sometimes we just migrate entire projects together. You know, that's way like if your teammate is working in a project, I'm working together, we can just merge our projects by just migrating them together into a blank project or something. So it's a very useful thing. New asset, there's asset actions. Migrate. Don't care. And then yeah, there's everything in there. And we're gonna put it into our project right there. Select folder. Great. I already done it, so I don't really need to overwrite. Very great. Everything's successfully done. So we have these things. That's kind of cool. but what's really cool? That's kind of cool. Let's get these. Here again, find them in our content browser and send it over. And I know these will work with the game engine because they're from the game engine. So this is a safe way of exploring and navigating around. Alright, so we've already kind of gotten ahead of ourselves a little bit. Let's go back to a blank project. Welcome to a blank project of the Unreal Engine. In Unity, when you start off with a blank project, you have a blue world. You add in a cube to that world, you have a cube and a world. And you just have a cube. Unreal gives you some stylish aims chairs, a glass sculpture, and a dynamic interactive day-night cycle. Alright? Also, there's some birds chirping at play. There you go. So anyway, that's what we get. So we already have these things we can start off with inside of our scene, and we can start thinking about ways we can move them, rotate them, and scale them. All right, and I just want to point out the fact that there's these little connectors in between. You can scale on 2 or 3 axes. So I want to uniformly scale. This is uniformly scaling. Or I could just scale on this axis. So, sorry, just those 2. So it's just doing those axes right. All 3. This is, you'll get comfortable with using this later on. So4 WER navigates between those. I don't want this right now at all. I'm going to delete it. Great. And so these chairs are right here hanging out. And if I want to get rid of them or I want to move them, I might have to mess around with some other settings. Let's see. Let's just make this a little bit bigger. Just this one floor. I'm going to maybe just hard code it in. Make it 5 times bigger on these 2 axes. And then we'll move it so this is centered again. Great. And now let's find our gentleman from our other experience that we migrated over. So we have the starter content. This is what I told you to include the 600 megabytes. And it has maps, it has materials. Actually, let's do that first real quick. We'll save this. And let's go back to maps. And the starter content has a starter map that is a showcase of everything in the starter map. Yeehaw. Here's all these materials you have that you can utilize. And I'll show you how to swap them out. Again, we have some particles right here. And then we have some objects that are ready to simulate physics, right? So I can say, right now they start right here, but I can say, simulate, watch them fall. This one ball right here, I want you to keep simulation changes, or the K button. Alright, set it, save the position for it. When I hit escape, it's still there. So I kept that simulation. That's why the reason why I use the simulation button. These guys are back at where they were before. That's also getting ahead of ourselves. So I have lake water right here, and I want this square to actually show the ceramic tile. How do I do that? Well, we've already kind of seen how you can find things in the content browser, but if I right click on this, it's probably going to show me where the mesh is, right? There's that floor. I want this material. That brings us to this other window, details. Everything about floor tile number 37 is listed here. Its location, rotation, scale, its mobility, which we'll get into in like 2 seconds, and then it's a static mesh that uses a material. So now to find the material in the content browser, should I want to migrate it or whatever, I have browse to asset in content browser. There we go, and I found water. I'm doing the reverse of what I said I was going to do. I'm going to put water onto this tile. So I can just drag it on, and we're happy. Okay. Undo. I could have also, with it selected here, gone to this asset and said, use selected asset from content browser. So this is how you can kind of multiple different ways of combining different assets together. So there, that works. This especially is good for using these especially good for when you're like in other windows and you're like way deep in code and like send me back to the content browser and it'll like automatically pop you back. Great. So we learned how to switch around materials between these assets. Obviously, the easiest way is just to drag it on. Right. Then what else is useful here? Nothing. I mean, it's really cool that everything's rendering in real time, right? I have not even in play and everything's running. That's another reason why you can see that Unreal's performance hog and that it really can drive your computer batty. You can kind of turn off these settings. Say, I don't want it to be in real time. And then it'll stop. And now we're in Unity, right? Yeah, there you go. I'm going to go back to the map we were kind of making from scratch with our Ames chairs. So how do we find the levels? Let's navigate back to the root and show me levels. I'm going to bring out the second window so I can navigate here and then see the stuff inside. All right, so here's my levels. And I was using actually the minimal default. Let's see this. And show me chairs. Okay, great. So let's add in our guy. All right, so that is called a skeletal mesh. I could probably find it in this example content somewhere. He's a character. Sorry, take off my filter. And there he is. But also I can just load in the animation. There he is. All right. Okay, and you saw that maybe what you would expect, that he would knock the chair over. Not set up. The engine doesn't want to have to calculate that if it doesn't have to. You can tell it to calculate that stuff. It's very easy. It's just a checkbox, but it wants to be lazy to begin with. If you want things to happen, you have to set them up. All right. It's not hard to just, these interactions have to be planned, because if everything was always calculating interactions, then it would imagine that it would always be very, very hard to compute, especially if it's not needed. All right. And everything else is fine. You see it has great shadows. Isn't that awesome? These shadows actually change with the light. When I said you start with 2 Ames chairs, a statue, interactive day-night cycle, that's this thing that's called the sky sphere. It's a very complicated, and here's your first look at blueprints. It's a very complicated blueprint that does a bunch of stuff. All right, we'll get into that later. But what's cool is all the variables that are driving the blueprint are all exposed as parameters. So we don't have to do that stuff. We just need to use sliders, which is great. So right now, the directional light is being driven by this light source, which is right there. So that's actually determining where our sun is, right? So this is an interactive. You're going to interactive day-night cycle, and I can rotate the sun. We can see the shadows here. I can rotate the sun, and shadows change, right, in real time. So I'm going to go to what would be like midnight, right? That's pretty much midnight, right? The sun, nothing has changed, right? It's just kind of, the shadows have changed, but I need to actually tell it to refresh the material. By clicking right here, now it's midnight. Really? Cool. Maybe I want it to be afternoon or like sunset. Let's go back. Now it's like sunset, right? So this is a really powerful way of like just out of the box, like having some control over our environment. What I like about having the was it the wrong thing? What was I rotating? I don't even know. What I like about having the stars out is that stars are on a slider too. Let's go back to Sky Sphere. So here's my stars. Let's dial in star brightness. There you go. All right, pretty cool. So that's cool. You'd notice that that it's auto exposure. It's adjusting to the brightness and the level. That's just a default setting, and I'll tell you to deal with that later on. But for right now, this is pretty cool. Okay. Now I want to, let's say, rearrange some of this stuff. So I'm going to move this chair just a little bit. Okay, moving the chair. That's good. And maybe I want to add in a little light from the engine. Okay, let's light this statue a little bit. All right, so light, pretty beautiful, right? There we go. We got these great little shadows. Okay, but right now what I see is it says preview right here. Right? What we I was going to say something about movable objects. A lot of things are built in statically, and you need to tell it when it needs to move. And same thing with kind of lights. And what's going to happen is as you build stuff, you're going to see this error message. I don't know where the error message is not showing up. It should be showing up by now. It says you need to rebuild lighting. Let's go ahead and just build it once. This is to show you that this is an error message. Normally I tell students to forget about it, but they usually really want to know and end up dealing with it about like half the students one-on-one. So underneath build, we're going to build lighting. What this is also called is baking. And if our objects aren't going to move, if our chair is set up to be static and our light is set up to be static, then we don't want to sit around every frame and figuring out that dynamic shadow. We want to say, let's be lazy and not worry about that shadow whatsoever. So by baking in a light, what it does is actually makes the light into a texture. Oh crap, everything went crazy. Let's dial down these crazy stars. Alright. And take this light, make sure it's static. There we go. This chair, static. And let's add in some other static meshes maybe. So static meshes from a root. There we go. We got Mr. Cylinder, and he's wearing a hat. Kind of. And they both set the static. Kind of wearing a hat off to the side. He has a lot of personality. I can't pull it off, but he can. There we go. Off to the side. Real quick. I wonder why it's not showing the setting. I might have messed around with too much stuff. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, there we go. This is the shadows that are baked into the ground. And this is actually part of the texture now. And that's just a cool feature of Unreal. And only if I move them, or if I do move them, let's say I move this to the light right here, and this is the shadow of the table. If I move it, the shadow's still there. It's literally baked in, right? And I need to rebake it. It should be giving a little error, but I don't know. It's not showing it right now. But anyway, that's how you build lighting in case you want to make it a little nicer. Okay, great. We have that. So let's change the sky a little bit. Right now we're saying the angle of the light is dictating what the sky looks like. We can get rid of that. And instead, we can say, I want to be in charge. So now it's pink, and now we're on Mars, right? And the clouds are blue, green, all these colors, and they're also just like I can't see them, so let's make them a little bit. Yeah, there you go, and let's just let's go crazy. There we go. So let's make it render in real time, and this is our world now. Cool. I'm stuck inside of a vomit tornado. All right, that's great. So if we hit play, there's the error I was looking for. This lighting needs to be rebuilt just because I moved that table and I just have to build. And so a lot of people get frustrated with that red marker. So that's it. This guy needs his fire because he looks ridiculous without his fire, right? So let's add in our particle systems. And we have a bunch though. Remember we brought over ribbon trails and we have steam. So maybe we don't care about having fire. Maybe we want them to have ribbon trails, right? There's that ambient dust, our VR dust. Also, it's there. We can just bring that in. And there we go. Oh yeah, there we go. Now we're VRing. Yeah, let's get all in our face. There you go. Boom. But we want to have maybe these ribbon trails. So I'm just gonna throw these in the world, and they're just gonna be doing the ribbon trail thing. And I'm gonna find Mr. Hero right here. He's called Hero TTP on Fire. Take a ribbon trails, and we're gonna parent it onto him, And it says, sure, but where? On which bone? So I want it to be on the head because I want to give him a hat. So now he has a particle hat, right? And as he plays around, he's going to be shooting out particles out of his head. He looks really confused. I'd be confused too, dude. And then maybe we want to have some sort of interaction. Here again, I'm just exploring. I want you to simulate physics, and I'll get into this next week in greater detail. And now that I said simulate physics, if I hit play, he's gonna knock it over. Right? So that was just a checkbox. It's ready. You just didn't want to have to think about it. And I said, no, I want you to think about it. Let's do it. Cool. So that's some cool world creation. I want to get to the landscape tool. It's not something I use much in a VR because you don't usually need giant vistas. Maybe it's better just to do a 360 video as your vista and just have it around a sphere that's very large in the world and not actually make geometry. But it can also be useful to use the sculpting tool as a landscape tool. But I want to show you how to use it performatively because I haven't done it before, and I see people make crazy things, and all of a sudden the landscape is 5 million polygons, and it's out of control. So we have other modes here. We're going to do 2 more of them. One is a landscape creation. So as soon as I click it, we're going to see that I have this huge landscape, and it's ready for us, okay? This is too much. It takes up too much space, and the resolution is too high. I'm going to say, let's do 15 quads, okay? So that's 5 by, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's like an 8 by 7 thing. And I don't need how many components? Oh no, the components is 8 by 8. Gotcha. I want to, and each section is 15 inside. Maybe I only need to have the overall resolution be, I don't know, 50 by 50. You see, you can kind of just keep on manipulating it until you have what you want. There you go. It looks like a good resolution for me, my landscape. I'm going to create it and say create. And I got this landscape, and immediately it gives me this tool, and it moves over to sculpting. And what I have now is a sculpting brush that is an additive landscape sculpting tool. And there's a fall off, right? There's an inner circle and outer circle. And the inner circle is 100% strength, the outer circle is 0% strength. If I click it, I create a mountain. And I could draw, like Photoshop, a mountain. Or 2, or 3. So this is huge. Can I undo? Yeah, I'm going to undo. I want to bring down the size, right? Maybe make it a little bit less strong, so bring down the strength. And then I can start painting on my world. I also can't see anything because my work light is upside down. So let's exit out real quick. Go back to regular mode. Let's rotate this so we can actually see what we're doing. There we go. So back to the painting tool. I'm making little mountains, right? I could draw one slowly. I could draw one a little faster. But it just looks like it's a really big game of chess, right? Let's give it a texture. So some other things we have is we can flatten it. So let's say I want like a plateau. I can say of this height, let's make everything there, right? So that's a flat little plateau. We can also simulate erosion. We can add a little bit of noise, add a little variance. There's a lot of different tools. Not only that, you can also smooth some of the things, just the same way you can take off some of the noise. But if we also want to sculpt and take away things, like I miss my center world, I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'll do the opposite. Wait, Shift. Let's see. Smooth tool, wrong tool. Sculpt tool. Shift does the opposite, and it takes away. Right? So you have both. And now my world has been uncovered. Let's add in a texture. So go back to materials. And it's going to be a cool space world. I said you're going to be a cool space world. Alright, seriously. Alright, you're going to be a cool space world, I tell you. Dun, 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 dun. It's trying to fight me. Don't fight me. Let's save. There we go. Cool Space World. Yay. Okay. I am making art. I am making art. Okay. So what we have now is a world with some stuff happening to it. And the homework is to create 3 hero shots. You're going to be doing the VR chat, the lab, but I also want you to jump in the engine, get comfortable with the layout, and just give me 3 high-resolution screenshots. So we'll hit play. And it says I do hero shots, right? So when you think about cinematic language, hero shot usually is shot a little bit lower, maybe not that low, and looking up to a guy, right? You're the hero of the story, and I'm framing him on the thirds, right? And if I hit tilde, I bring up my console, and this is in the syllabus. If I type in high res shot, it auto completes it for me too. Hit tab, and then I can put in a multiplier, so space and a multiplier of 4. It's going to kind of choke up for a second. Alright, and it gives me a link to where I can find that. If I don't hit there quick enough, I know that my project has a saved folder. What was it called? NV. There we go. Saved folder. And this is an HD screen, but I did a multiplier, and this is now a much higher resolution image. See, I can really get in there before it pixelates. So this is a really great way of making content, making screenshots. So I want you to make 3 of these of your world so I can kind of prove that you've made it, but also see your aesthetic eye for framing up shots for making like these hero images, right? And you know, I think that this is all really cool, but I think that the space world would have like space plants and stuff. So let's use one more tool called the foliage tool. And the foliage tool, we can throw in static meshes, things that we want to you know, plant that will have grow. So I'm going to do static meshes. And what do we want to have living in this world? Well, we don't have much. We're limited, but I told you we'd be limited. I think that this world has, well, some bushes. That makes sense. And lamps. And sconces. Yeah. Let's rocks. Yeah. Rocks. Yeah, rocks. And giant arrows. Alright. So now you see I also still have a little bubble right here. The same thing is I have a brush size and a brush density and an erase density. So if I just click, there we go. I'm Johnny Arrowseed. So those arrows are a little big. So we actually have settings for all these objects, and I can go down here and uniformly set up so the scale is maybe like 1/10 of that. And I can do some randomness, right? I can go from 1/10 to, you know, maybe 0.05 to 0.1. So there's some randomness, there's some variation in here. Or 0.1, sorry. And let's try again. Paint. The rocks are too big, so I'll make the rocks 1/10 of the size. Let's undo. Rocks, half size. 1/10 size. 2.25. Alright, one more time. That looks cool. Let's get in there and look. That's pretty fun. The arrows are there. Rocks are a little tiny. Maybe the plants are a little big. Sconces are perfect. Yeah, the sconces taste like sconce berries. So let's move the rocks a little bit bigger. And paint over here. Ah, there we go. That's pretty cool. Over here. Okay, that's pretty cool. Maybe over here is Sconce Island, and we want these to be really big. So over in Sconce Island, and we want to paint on a bunch much quicker. There we go. That's Sconce Island over there. Sconce Island, and then we take on the paint density, and then this world can be, you know, the Arrowhead Trail or something. So I take these back down to 1. And these guys can be a little bigger now, so 0.5 by 0.5. And I can kind of just maybe bring it down in size and paint it on nicely, right? They don't really know about collisions on this. It's way too much. In fact, I can walk straight through them. This is definitely a scenic thing, not a functional thing. You can do things with foliage at runtime. If you ever want to do that, like you can make a whole forest and go up to it and chop down a tree. But it's about getting close to a foliage. This is instanced. These are it's really drawing this one mesh and it's iterating a whole bunch of times to save on draw calls. And then I don't care about doing sconces or rocks or arrows, and I just want to do bushes and lamps for the immediate area around. So there's a lot more settings, including like for the lamp, I can make sure that it's like assigned to the normal. So if I paint it right here on this edge, oh, it's not going to do it. I think there's like a threshold for how crazy it can be offset or something like that. Anyway, so you get the idea. We've now made all these different worlds, and we exit out of this mode, hit play. And we have a nice vantage point from sneaking in through Sconce Island, Sconcelvania. Right, something like that, I don't know. There's everything happening. Right. So then we do the high res shot. They're ready to go. This guy. He's just like he's in a world of hurt and just won't end. Alright. I'm gonna do a multiplier of 8 and we'll get him right now. Cool. And then I think we've proven that it looks nice. And that error message that says, you know, that it needs to be rebuilt, it's not there, and this looks great, right? This is good resolution. Right, we can reframe this any way we want to. It looks great. Cool. So, you know, this is a really beginning thing. We're going to get into VR interactivity. I mean, in general, if I wanted to make this VR experience, all I have to do is plug in the Oculus and then say VR preview. And the same thing, it starts where the player starts. It doesn't have any interactivity, but it's a way of looking at it in case you want to walk around inside of this place we just made. So it's really easy to get started in that way. And you know, keep it limited to what we're using so that nothing gets too all the assets aren't hairy. They all work just fine, right? And cool. So have fun with all this stuff. And you know, right now we're being a little bit random. Next week we're going to really think about narrative stuff and try to really get to the point where we're coming up with concepts and trying to faithfully produce things that meet our concepts. Again, let's do baby steps. I don't want to leave anybody behind this early on. Let's just get used to Unreal as a software package and acclimate to it and try to break it. Essentially, try to break it. Try to really mess it up. You can always uninstall it and install it back. Let's find out what you can't do so that we know that now before we start working on something that's more precious to us. And we need it to always work. Do you have any questions about this stuff today? Pretty much straightforward. Yeah, go ahead. Why Unreal and why not Unity? If you want to do Unity, you're more than welcome to. My demos might be kind of pointless for you, but Unreal is it renders better. It's a nicer looking engine. It's a AAA gaming engine instead of a indie development platform. I happen to personally have come to Unreal to VR from motion capture, and my entire suite of plugins for motion capture are only for Unreal. It has better skeletal mesh animation tools, but yeah, it's a AAA gaming engine that looks really nice. Unity, they're probably, Unity's a bigger, it's a great engine. I learned it first. But once I found Unreal, I've never looked back and gone back to Unity. And I turn down the Unity jobs all the time. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah. We're going to spend a whole week on motion capture and retargeting data to characters and all that kind of stuff. So you'll be able to make custom stuff, and we'll even mess around a little bit with like using the motion capture system to walk around in larger spaces to do location-based VR entertainment. Okay. Cool. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to stop the recording.